The autumn wind swept through the small town of Millbrook, Tennessee, carrying with it the scent of dried leaves and the distant hum of a crowd gathering at the county courthouse. It was the kind of day that should have been peaceful, but for Sarah Mitchell, it felt like the world was collapsing around her. She stood at the edge of the courthouse steps, her hands trembling as she clutched a worn manila envelope. Inside were the foreclosure papers, the official end of everything she had worked for. The family farm, passed down through 3 generations, was about to be auctioned off to the highest bidder. Her father's legacy, her childhood memories, the land where she'd learned to ride horses and plant corn, all of it would belong to someone else in less than an hour. Sarah's eyes were red and swollen from crying. She'd spent the last 2 weeks trying to find a way out, calling every bank, every relative, every friend who might lend her money, but the debt was too deep. Her father had taken out loans to keep the farm running during the bad years, and when he passed away suddenly from a heart attack 6 months ago, Sarah inherited not just the land, but the crushing weight of his financial mistakes. She was 32 years old, a former teacher who'd given up her career in Nashville to come back home and care for her ailing father. Now she had nothing. No job, no savings, and in less than an hour, no home. Before we continue with Sarah's story, we'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. And if you enjoy emotional, real-life stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss the next incredible journey. Hit that notification bell, and let's keep this community growing together. The courthouse doors opened, and people began filing out onto the lawn where the auction would take place. Sarah recognized most of them: neighbors, local business owners, and a few out-of-town investors who'd driven in hoping to snag a property at a bargain price. She felt their eyes on her, some filled with pity, others with barely concealed excitement at the opportunity. Auctioneer Dale Hutchins, a portly man in his 60s with a booming voice, set up his podium near the courthouse steps. He'd been doing this for 30 years, and foreclosure auctions were just another day at the office for him. He barely glanced at Sarah as he shuffled his papers and tested his microphone. "All right, folks, let's get started," Dale announced, his voice echoing across the lawn. "Today we're auctioning the Mitchell family farm, 240 acres of prime agricultural land, including a farmhouse, barn, and various outbuildings. The starting bid is set at $350,000 to cover outstanding debts and legal fees." Sarah felt her stomach drop. She knew the land was worth at least twice that amount, but in a foreclosure, fair market value didn't matter. Whoever showed up with cash would take it home. A hand shot up immediately. "$350," called out Marcus Brennan, a wealthy developer from Memphis who'd been buying up farmland all over the county to convert into subdivisions. Sarah's heart sank. She knew Marcus. He'd approached her father years ago, offering to buy the farm, but her father had refused. "This land feeds people," he'd told Marcus. "I'm not selling it so you can build McMansions." $375, another voice chimed in, a local farmer named Tom Hendricks, though Sarah could see from his expression that he was already stretching his budget. $400,000. Marcus countered without hesitation. Tom shook his head and stepped back. He couldn't compete with Marcus's deep pockets. Sarah's vision blurred with tears. This was really happening. She was about to watch her family's legacy get sold to a man who would bulldoze everything her father had built. $400,000 going once, Dale announced. Going twice, $600,000. The voice cut through the crowd like a knife. Every head turned toward the source. A tall man in his late 30s, wearing worn jeans, work boots, and a faded blue flannel shirt. His face was weathered from years in the sun, with deep-set brown eyes and a strong jawline shadowed by a few days' stubble. He stood with his hands in his pockets, his expression calm but firm. Sarah didn't recognize him. Marcus Brennan's face darkened. $650, he shot back. $700,000. The stranger replied without emotion. A murmur rippled through the crowd. This was getting serious. Marcus clenched his jaw. $750, $1 million, the crowd gasped. Even Dale the auctioneer looked surprised. Sarah's legs nearly gave out beneath her. Who was this man? And why was he willing to pay so much for her family's farm? Marcus stared at the stranger, his face red with anger. He opened his mouth to bid higher, then seemed to think better of it. He'd already gone far beyond what he'd planned to spend. With a disgusted shake of his head, he turned and walked away. Dale cleared his throat. $1 million going once, going twice. Sold to the gentleman in the blue flannel. The gavel came down with a sharp crack that seemed to echo in Sarah's ears. It was over. The farm was gone. Sarah felt the tears spill down her cheeks as the reality crashed over her. She turned and ran, pushing through the dispersing crowd, desperate to get away before she completely broke down in front of everyone. She stumbled down Main Street, her vision blurred, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She'd made it about 2 blocks when she heard footsteps behind her. "Ma'am, wait!" Sarah didn't stop. She couldn't face whoever it was, couldn't handle another pitying look or empty consolation. "Sarah Mitchell, stop!" The use of her full name made her pause. She turned, wiping her eyes, to find the stranger from the auction standing a few feet away. Up close, she could see the kindness in his eyes, despite his weathered appearance. "Leave me alone," she managed to choke out. "You got what you came for." "No," he said quietly. "I didn't." Sarah stared at him, confused. "What?" He took a step closer. "My name is James Colter. I own a farm about 50 miles north of here, and you're coming with me." Sarah's blood ran cold. "Excuse me?" James held up his hands. "That came out wrong. Let me explain, please." Something in his voice made her pause. He didn't sound threatening, just earnest. "You have 30 seconds. Sarah said, crossing her arms defensively. James took a deep breath. 23 years ago, your father saved my life. I was 10 years old, and my family was driving through Millbrook when our truck broke down. We had no money, no place to stay. Your father, John Mitchell, he took us in, fed us, fixed our truck, didn't ask for a penny. He told my dad, that's what neighbors do, even if we just met. Sarah felt a lump forming in her throat. That sounded exactly like something her father would do. My dad never forgot that kindness, James continued. He always said if we ever had the chance to pay it back, we should. When I heard about the foreclosure, these things make the news in farming communities. I knew what I had to do. You paid $1 million out of gratitude? Sarah asked, incredulously. No, James said. I paid $1 million because that farm is worth it. And because I need someone who knows that land to help me run it. Sarah's mouth fell open. What are you talking about? James pulled a folded paper from his jacket pocket. I had my lawyer draw this up this morning. It's a partnership agreement. You keep 51% ownership of the farm. I own 49%. You manage the day-to-day operations, make all the farming decisions. I provide the capital to get the place back on its feet and modernize the equipment. We split the profits after expenses are paid. You stay in the farmhouse. It's your home. I'll build a small cabin on the North 40 for myself. Sarah stared at the document, unable to process what she was hearing. Why would you do this? Because I know what it's like to lose everything, James said quietly. After my dad's death 5 years ago, I lost our family farm to a bad business partner. It took me 3 years of working 2 jobs to buy enough land to start over. I know what you're feeling right now. And because your father showed my family kindness when we needed it most, I'm showing you kindness now. That's how it's supposed to work. Tears streamed down Sarah's face again. But this time they weren't tears of despair. I don't understand. You don't even know me. I know you gave up your career to take care of your father, James said. I know you've been trying to save this farm on your own. I know you're a fighter. That's enough for me. Sarah looked down at the partnership agreement, her hands shaking. What if I say no? James shrugged. Then the farm is legally mine, and you walk away with nothing. But I'm hoping you'll say yes, because I can't run that place without you. I'm a good farmer, but I don't know your land. I don't know which fields flood in spring, which pastures have the best soil, where your father planted his windbreaks. That knowledge is worth more than money. Sarah felt something shift inside her, a tiny spark of hope in the darkness that had consumed her for months. She looked up at James, searching his face for any sign of deception, but all she saw was sincerity. If I say yes, she said slowly, I want final say on what we plant and how we treat the land. No chemicals that'll poison the groundwater. No cutting corners. Agreed, James said immediately. And I want it in writing that you can never sell your share without offering it to me first. Already in the contract. Paragraph 7. Sarah couldn't help but let out a short, disbelieving laugh. You really thought this through. I had a 2-hour drive to work out the details, James said with a small smile. Sarah wiped her eyes and looked back toward the courthouse, where her entire life had nearly been sold away. Then she looked at James, the stranger who'd appeared out of nowhere with an impossible offer. Okay, she whispered. Yes, I'll do it. James extended his hand. Partners. Sarah took his hand and shook it firmly. Partners. And the first few weeks of the partnership were awkward. Sarah had spent so long fighting alone that accepting help felt foreign and uncomfortable. She'd wake up at dawn to find James already in the barn, fixing equipment or mucking out stalls. He worked quietly, never complaining, never asking for praise. Slowly, she began to trust him. James proved to be as good as his word. He brought in new equipment, a modern tractor to replace her father's ancient one, an irrigation system for the south fields, solar panels for the barn. But he always asked Sarah's opinion first. always deferred to her knowledge of the land. They fell into a routine. Sarah would plan the crop rotations and manage the planting schedules, while James handled the business side, negotiating with suppliers, finding markets for their produce, managing the books. In the evenings, they'd sit on the farmhouse porch and go over the day's work, planning for tomorrow. It was during one of these evening conversations, about 6 weeks into their partnership, that Sarah finally asked the question that had been nagging at her. "James, why didn't you just buy your own farm? Why partner with me?" James was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the fields bathed in the golden light of sunset. "Because I learned the hard way that farming isn't just about land and equipment. It's about legacy. It's about knowing the history of every fence post and every tree. When I lost my family's farm, I lost that connection. I bought new land, and it's good land. But it doesn't have stories. It doesn't have roots." He turned to look at Sarah. "Your farm has 3 generations of stories. Your grandfather planted those oak trees along the driveway. Your grandmother built that stone wall by the creek. Your father designed that barn to catch the cross breeze in summer. I didn't want to take that away from you. I wanted to be part of preserving it." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes again. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet," James said with a wry smile. "Wait until you see my plan for expanding the chicken coop. You might throw me off the property." Sarah laughed, the first real laugh she'd had in months. As autumn turned to winter, the partnership deepened into friendship. Sarah learned that James was a widower. His wife had died in a car accident 4 years ago, leaving him alone with his grief and his determination to rebuild his life. He rarely talked about her, but Sarah could see the pain in his eyes when the subject came up. For his part, James learned that Sarah carried her own grief. She blamed herself for not catching her father's heart condition sooner, for not forcing him to see a doctor, for not being enough to save him. "You can't carry that," James told her one cold December evening as they repaired a section of fence. "I carried guilt for years after Emma died. I was driving that night. I walked away without a scratch and she didn't, but a counselor finally made me understand. Guilt doesn't honor the people we've lost. Living well honors them. Making something good from the pain honors them." Sarah looked at him, seeing the hard-won wisdom in his words. "Is that what you're doing here? Making something good?" "I'm trying," James said, "and I think it's working." By spring, the farm was thriving. The new irrigation system meant they could plant crops that had never been viable before. The solar panels cut their electricity costs by 60%. Sarah's careful crop rotation plan was paying off with healthier soil and better yields. But more than the physical improvements, something else was growing on the farm, something neither Sarah nor James had anticipated. It started with small things, the way James always made sure Sarah's coffee was ready in the morning, the way Sarah would pack an extra sandwich for James's lunch, the lingering looks when they thought the other wasn't watching, the accidental brush of hands when they were working side by side. One evening in late May, after a particularly long day of planting, they sat on the porch watching a thunderstorm roll in across the fields. Lightning flickered in the distance, and the air smelled of rain and fresh earth. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah said quietly. "Sure." "When you showed up at that auction, was it really just about paying back a debt to my father?" James was silent for a long moment. Finally, he said, "At first, yes. But I'd be lying if I said that was the only reason I structured the deal the way I did." Sarah's heart was pounding. "What do you mean?" James turned to face her. "When I was researching the foreclosure, I found an article about you in the local paper from a few years back. It was about a teacher who started a community garden program at her school, teaching kids about sustainable farming. You were smiling in the photo, surrounded by children holding vegetables they'd grown, and I thought, this is someone who understands what really matters." He paused, then continued, "I came to that auction with 2 plans. Plan A was to buy the farm and offer you the partnership. Plan B was to buy the farm and hire you as the farm manager. Either way, I needed you here, because I saw in that photo what I'd been missing in my own life. Purpose, connection, joy. I saw someone worth knowing." Sarah felt her breath catch. "James, I know the partnership agreement says we're business partners," James said softly, "and I'll respect that boundary if that's all you want. But Sarah, these past 6 months working alongside you, watching you bring this farm back to life, seeing your passion for the land and the community, I've fallen for you, and I needed you to know that." The first drops of rain began to fall, pattering on the porch roof. Sarah stood up, and for a moment, James thought she was going to walk away. Instead, she moved closer to him, close enough that he could see the tears in her eyes. "When you walked up to me that day and said, 'You're coming with me,' I thought you were crazy," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "But you gave me back my home. You gave me back my purpose. You gave me back hope when I thought I'd lost everything." She reached out and took his hand. "I've been falling for you too, James. I was just too scared to admit it." James stood up, his hand still holding hers. "What are you scared of? Losing it all again?" Sarah whispered. "Losing you." "You won't," James said firmly. "I'm not going anywhere. We're partners, remember? 51, 49. You're stuck with me." Sarah laughed through her tears. "That's the worst romantic declaration I've ever heard." "Give me a break," James said with a grin. "I'm a farmer, not a poet." And then he kissed her, soft and gentle as the rain fell around them. For the summer brought not just a bountiful harvest, but also a proposal. James asked Sarah to marry him in the middle of the cornfield on a hot July afternoon, with dirt under their fingernails and sweat on their brows. It was perfect. They married in September in a small ceremony on the farm with the whole community in attendance. Even Marcus Brennan showed up, having developed a grudging respect for James after seeing how well they'd turned the farm around. But it was during the wedding reception that the real surprise came. Old Mrs. Patterson, who'd been Sarah's first-grade teacher and had known her family for decades, approached the newlyweds with an envelope. "This is from your father," she said to Sarah. "He gave it to me 3 years ago and made me promise to only give it to you if the farm was ever sold." Sarah's hands shook as she opened the envelope. Inside was a letter in her father's distinctive handwriting. "My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, then the farm has been sold, and I imagine you're heartbroken. I'm sorry for the debt I left you. I made poor decisions trying to keep this place running, and you shouldn't have to pay for my mistakes. But I want you to know something important. This farm is not your legacy. You are my legacy. The way you care for people, the way you fight for what you believe in, the way you find joy in simple things, that's what I'm most proud of. Land comes and goes. Buildings fall down and get rebuilt. But character, kindness, love, those things last forever. Those things matter. So wherever you are when you read this, whatever you're doing, know that I'm proud of you. Know that you are enough, exactly as you are. And know that the best inheritance I could give you isn't land or money. It's the knowledge that you can survive anything and come out stronger. I love you, sweetheart. Live well. Be happy. That's all I ever wanted for you. Love always, Dad." Sarah broke down crying, and James held her as she sobbed into his shoulder. When she finally composed herself, she looked around at the farm, the land that had almost been lost, the home that had been saved, the community that had gathered to celebrate. "He was right," she whispered to James. "None of this would matter without the people in it." "Your dad was a wise man," James said. Sarah smiled through her tears. "So are you, for giving me the chance to learn that lesson." 2 years later, Sarah stood in the same cornfield where James had proposed. But this time, she wasn't alone. In her arms was their 6-month-old daughter, Emma, named after James's first wife, with Sarah's blessing. The little girl had her father's brown eyes and her mother's stubborn chin. James walked up beside them, his arm slipping around Sarah's waist. "I was just thinking about that day at the auction," Sarah said. "If someone had told me then that I'd be standing here now, married to a stranger, with a baby, running a successful farm, I never would have believed them." "Life has a way of surprising us," James said. "You surprised me," Sarah said, turning to look at him. "You walked into my worst day and turned it into the beginning of my best life." James kissed her forehead. "We did that together. Partners, remember?" "Partners," Sarah agreed, smiling. As the sun set over the fields, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Sarah thought about all the twists and turns that had brought her to this moment. The loss, the fear, the unexpected salvation, the love that had grown from the ashes of her old life. She'd learned that sometimes the worst moments lead to the best destinations, that strangers can become family, that home isn't just a place, it's the people you share it with. And most importantly, she'd learned that when you're at your lowest point, sometimes all it takes is one person, one kind, unexpected, stubborn person, to change everything. The woman who'd run away from the auction crying was gone. In her place stood a wife, a mother, a farmer, a partner, someone who'd lost everything and gained so much more, someone who'd learned that the end of one story is just the beginning of another. And this story, Sarah thought, as she looked at her husband and daughter, was turning out to be the best one yet.